Welcome back to Munro Live. So today we have torn down the Kia EV9 seats, and I want to kind of give you an overview of what is in those seats, how does it affect costs, how does it affect not really performance but features, and really give you an internal understanding of the things that I look at as a consultant and as a costing consultant. Now, when you talk about a seat, it has the primary function of providing you a comfortable location to sit while you're driving or being driven in your vehicle. Tied to that directly is the fact that a seat is a safety device. It is something that is meant to protect you in the instance of a crash. Beyond that is the style. It wants to be somewhere that you can put in money, put in effort, put in individualization, some sort of a style that convinces you that this is a worthwhile vehicle to purchase. Form follows function. So the style, in my mind, does come last. However, nobody wants to have a cookie cutter seat. No one really wants every seat in every vehicle to be the same. They want some sort of definition. But from my point of view, I want the customer, which would be the OEM, to really understand, where am I putting the money to provide that definition? Do I understand how much this form decision is really costing me? And that's something that I would like to get into today.
This video is brought to you by the LTTstore.com. Introducing the LTT Screwdriver, the ultimate ratcheting tool, perfect for PC building or keeping handy while on the go. With exceptional feel and performance, it's engineered to elevate your toolkit. The finely tuned ratcheting mechanism delivers ultralight back force for superior control, reducing fatigue, and making even the smallest screws a breeze to drive. The shaft features intricate diamond-cut knurling for precise control over the ratchet. Inside the handle, you'll find convenient internal bit storage, designed in collaboration with MegaPro. It securely holds up to 12 22mm bits or 6 longer bits up to 42mm, with a spring-loaded mechanism that's as satisfying as it is functional. The 5.4 Newton pull force broach magnet in the shaft ensures you never lose your bits and even helps pick up screws magnetically. Each screwdriver comes with 12 rust-resistant bits and a 3-lobed handle designed to fit naturally in your hand for maximum comfort. Upgrade your toolkit today. Click the link below to get yours now.
So with these seats, we have the front row seats. This is going to be the driver and passenger. I have the driver's seat torn down, passenger seat for reference. The second row seat, now because this is a 3-row vehicle, this is a unique structure for the second row. It looks much like a front row seat. However, you will notice that the seat back hinge point is up higher than what you would normally see on a traditional front seat. That is because this seat needs to be able to fold down and lay flat for any type of internal storage reasons. So the structure is actually enhanced. It is bigger than the structure that you would see on a front row seat. And then third row seats. Third row seats on a 3-row vehicle are normally very slimmed down. They're at the very, very back. A person my size is normally not going to sit back there. This is going to be the children. And the sizes of the seat structure and the way they function reflect that. So let me open up and explain a few things. You will notice all of these little reflective dots. And then of course, white powder on many of these components. Let me explain what those are and why, as you watch me handle these parts, I'm gonna become pretty chalky. These seats have all been scanned, meaning you basically have a light or a laser gun that you're dragging over the seat to create a 3-dimensional image to be able to be used later on. Well, when you're trying to do that, you need reference points and you need some sort of reflective surface that is going to shine back to that laser gun to say, hey, this is where I am at in space. All of these little dots are reference points that are going to be picked up by that scanner. And if you scan multiple times from multiple different angles, you can actually pick a dot and take those different scans, merge them together at the location of that dot. So that's why you'll see dots all over all these components. And that's also why you'll see the chalk. White reflects light, so they'll put a powder on many of these different components to help that light as it's reflecting back to the scanner. Now, it gives you a nice three-dimensional scan, which is great, but in handling the parts later on, that chalk gets kind of annoying. So you know what a seat is, you know what a seat does. It's providing you a location to sit in the vehicle, hopefully a comfortable location, and it is a safety device. So now let's talk about form. The form is where the additional cost is going into this seat. Now, when we talked about the Cybertruck and a few of the other vehicles I've referenced, I focused on headrests. Because we have 3 different styles of headrests for this vehicle, I want to continue that focus. All right, this is a mesh headrest. You can see I can pass my hand right through there. On one hand, you'll say, oh, that's nice. It's going to be nice and airy. It's going to be lightweight. It's not going to get hot. Well, how often do you complain about a hot headrest? But in order for this type of an execution, a lot had to happen internal to this headrest, which is adding additional cost. We have a structure. Now, lots of times you'll just have a tube structure and then you'll have a piece of foam that is poured around that structure. But because this has to have additional plastics mounted to it, I have to have a structure that has mounting points. This gets fed inside of the structure. There are more structural components, unfortunately, that I don't have here that provide an attachment and closeout base. You can see the attachment points here. Then there is that airy foam that is applied over top of that structure. Then there is this fabric, which also has a retaining ring that has to be captured and then locked into that headrest structure. Because of all of the additional materials and processing steps, this headrest is probably between $3 to $5 more than a traditional headrest. You have 2 of these per vehicle, 1 on each side. All right, so on a cost basis, you're looking at $10 per vehicle in manufacturing costs. Well, then you have the overhead costs of managing those parts, designing those parts. Then, of course, you really want to make a profit over the total cost of your vehicle. So you could be looking at a $15 vehicle cost for 2 of these headrests. So this is where I ask you as a customer, these style decisions happen in many locations across the vehicle. If you know that you are paying $15 more for that vehicle to have this style headrest versus a traditional headrest, would you make that conscious decision? The OEMs make that decision, but I don't know if they always understand the total cost of their decisions. Lots of times design studios get free rein. This is what we want executed. By the time it gets to engineering, they have their marching orders. All right, I have to make this type of design. Okay, so I've made a design. It works. Check the box. Yes, it works. It meets the shape. The results, the cost, the amount of tooling winds up becoming not even secondary, but third in the process. So, is $15 per vehicle increased cost worth it to you? Back up around this headrest, I want to mention this back panel. There is a back panel, you'll see how that back panel comes up. Because the back panel goes higher than the seat back, we have to have another panel, which is a closeout on this inside edge. All right, so now we have to have a 2-part design coming together rather than a single back panel. They've decided to have this fabric area, which now adds another component, but this is now a grab point. If I'm in the second row seat and I'm getting out of the seat and you've provided me a handle, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to pull on it. Well, because of that, this needs to be strengthened. And how do they do that? Here's the seat back. This seat back has an additional bracket that has been MIG welded in place. This bracket is providing the strength and the attachment point for the upper portion of the back panel and for that inner panel. So, in order for them to give a raised back panel that has now become a handle, they have to have multiple components in that back panel. They have to have an additional bracket and they have to have additional fasteners. This is another point where I would ask them. The decision to have that raised back panel on 2 seats, both on the driver's seat and on the passenger seat, the additional costs, the additional components, is it worthwhile to the customer? Are you going to pay another $15 per vehicle to have that type of a feature in 2 locations? These are the things when I'm talking about costs that I want them to be aware of. Again, you want differentiation between your vehicles. You do want to provide impressive features. However, you also want to be aware of how much am I giving away and what is it costing me and what is it costing the final customer? Are those features really worth their cost? What is that cost benefit? Continuing on with this back panel. Well, this is not the panel, this is the back frame structure. This is the Kia EV9. We know that Hyundai and Kia are very, very close and they share a lot of common structure. For the most part, they shared a seat back structure. This is the seat back from the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Here's our seat back from that Kia EV9. Now at first, I was expecting these to be the same. They are not. The stampings have changed over time. I was impressed on the Hyundai Ioniq because these stampings are very, very minimized. All of the assembly, this is done with laser welds. So this is put into a fixture, robotic laser welding, putting it all together. It's been tuned, it's very, very efficient. When I looked at this and I compared it to the Rivian, which the Rivian was made by the same company that makes these structures, I was looking at this and it was similar. I can see the laser welds. However, all of the things that were unique to Rivian are MIG welded on. So they had to throw a lot of money at this for the differentiation. All right, comparing that to the EV9. A lot in this structure is the same, a few things are different. You'll notice that it is MIG welds that is welding all of the structure together. I don't know if they started to make some of their changes within the structure and they have not had a full process set up yet to have the efficient laser welds, but it's something that I wanted to make notice of. I looked at some of the side stampings and some of the different hole placements. They have changed over time, but a lot of the main theme is still there. One that I've pointed out in the past is this hole, which they had a unique fastener for mounting back panels. You'll see that hole is common across these 2 structures, even though the stampings are different across them. So here's that back panel, that raised back panel. Here's that fabric wrapped closeout that's being attached to that. I don't have the inner panel, unfortunately. The different attachment features, screw features, because again, since this is now basically a handle, this has to be affixed very, very firmly. So there's cost in all of that. So one other main feature for the front row seat that I have to make mention of is this lower calf rest. We saw that same feature on the Hyundai Ioniq 5. That calf rest has this large painted welded assembly that is enabling it. This is quite heavy. Normally you'll tune down your main seat structure over time. You'll get this to 0.8 millimeter thick steel, very, very efficient. But when you have a feature like this that is not a very high take rate, you just have to make sure that it works. Normally these don't get tuned down. They don't become efficient, which is why it's still quite heavy. That component has a plastic support in there, your foam bun, your cover, which is then retained on the back. All of those components adding into the cost. Now, maybe a calf rest is a great benefit. This is going to be a higher cost per vehicle. That is probably going to approach $30 to $40 in total after you consider profit, after you consider all of the overhead, the different costs that had to be added into the seat structure. Is that a location where you really want to spend money, or you as the customer are getting a benefit from it? Same comment with headrests. So this is the second row seat. This second row seat is actually larger than the first row seat, which makes sense. You don't really have the lower footwell, you have a flatter floor, so I have to raise the structure up higher. I still have the calf rest. This is still an electronic or powered seat. But this headrest, see how it has flexible sides? So that you can really hug around the side of your head. It doesn't move a lot, moves a little, provides some benefit. But of course, if you're really turning your head hard, you can straighten it right back out. Here's my question, why? I have to add in additional sewing in order to hold that shape, otherwise it would just pop out. I have to add in additional structure. Why, if there's a benefit to having this cup or circle around my head, why doesn't it just always be in that position? Let's look at some of the structure. So here's my headrest base. Okay. Again, that plastic backing, which I'm now loading that into. All right. A back panel that gets bolted and snapped in place there. Okay. A hinged molded mechanism that gets attached into there. And then on top of this, we have the foam, we have the cover, and we have the retention. This most likely is more expensive even than the front row seat. So the front row seat is giving us an airy headrest with that mesh. This is giving us a headrest that can cup around the sides. Not a lot, just a little bit. And it's not really providing any type of support because if I hit it, it flattens right back out. How much are you willing to pay for this type of a feature for your second row occupant? Is this the right place for the OEM to spend their money and to charge you more money for on any vehicle that you buy? You may say yes, that you love this style of feature. Great, buy that type of a car. But I just want to make note that we're now up to possibly $100 in these types of features that you're going to be paying additional for this vehicle to have whatever benefit we've been able to identify. Now, seats are expensive. This is a 3-row vehicle. The last 3-row vehicle I worked on, which again was for an ICE engine vehicle, the seats were so expensive in that vehicle, they actually cost more than the entire powertrain. So I want to caution a lot of people when they think of these things as being secondary or even ancillary. When I first started working with Munro, we were really talking a lot with startups. They wanted to make the next best EV. Okay, that's admirable. Why do you want to make the next big EV? Because we have a wonderful battery. If you have a great battery, sell batteries. Don't try and make an EV. Because once you get to all of these other components, which are highly necessary for a vehicle, this is what's going to kill you. Trying to manufacture all these parts, which again, for a 3-row vehicle, which I last did on an ICE vehicle, the seats cost more than the entire powertrain. If you're not willing to really think through the complete design of everything that's happening within the seats, the hundreds to thousands of components that are here, then you're gonna really have a problem. Let's set this headrest aside. Now let's look at this seat back. Now again, I had mentioned how this seat back has a raised hinge position so that this seat back can fold flat to create a load floor for storage. I like what Kia and Hyundai do here. On their seat back, you now have a load floor. A lot of companies will have a large injection molding panel that sits on top of the structure, or they will have a solid metal stamping that sits on top of the structure. And that is what your load floor is made out of. They have the side frame structure, yes, then they have a wire structure. And this corrugated plastic, all it is die cut. That is now attached to that material and then covered. This is providing your load floor. First time I saw that, I thought, no way that's going to work. Underneath knee loads, that's going to have all kinds of problems. It's going to break. But the more I think about it, I really like it. It's low cost, it's modular. You're not really making any tooling to make this other than a cutting die, which is very inexpensive. The attachment method is inexpensive. I like that feature. I've heard some people say, well, we can't have that feature if an occupant behind it can possibly contact that. Okay, there is a third row on this vehicle, so that is what we were looking at. That's what you're hitting if you're crashing from the third row. Is it better to have a flexible piece of corrugated plastic or to have this being a solid steel stamping? And if we're talking about third row, which does the same thing, there's no one sitting behind this. No one is going to come in contact. So this would be an appropriate area to have that type of a feature. The third row seat has several mechanisms built into it. We know that this seat needs to fold down to create a load floor, but because of how close this seat is to the second row seat, the headrest also needs to get out of the way. So we do have a more expensive headrest mechanism just so we can have that pull cable to allow that to fold. This is one stamping, one spring, a cable, and then a mechanism here. This is fairly simplified. This is attached into our seat back. How do those cables run? Let me show you something. There's going to be a cable at the top shoulder, which you can see on the back of the completed seat next to us. There's also going to be a cable coming out of the side. If I'm coming at the back of the vehicle, I would grab a cable up here and pull it to fold the seat. If I'm in the second row and I want to fold the seat, I would grab the cable on the side, this side. All right, so this cable comes in and it grabs this arm. This cable comes in and it grabs this arm. As I pull up, there's a cable here that is being pulled and a cable here that is being pulled. This cable is pulling the hinge that is allowing this to fold forward. This cable is pulling the headrest, which is allowing the headrest to pull. You will notice that as I pull this, by separating these arms, I can actually change when one cable pulls in relation to the other. I have a certain distance that I can pull the headrest before I grab the component that is actually pulling on the hinge. This is a mechanism that is hidden inside of both of these third row seats. We have multiple cables going up, that folding headrest, the folding hinge position. There is additional cost in these components. So the third row seat is the smallest seat. It is the most uncomfortable seat, but because of what the seat has to do, it is actually made out of thicker steel than the front row seat. It has some more intricate mechanisms than the front row seat. By having that third row, you're not really throwing in something that's cheap in the back. You're throwing in something that is expensive in the back, but still uncomfortable. So again, where am I really putting those costs? How is it benefiting me? Is it worthwhile? I've talked to some people who say, no, I have to have a three-row vehicle. You don't understand. I have kids, and sometimes when we go to get the grandparents, well, the grandparents are going to be in the comfortable second row seat. We have to throw the kids all the way in the back. When you're approaching the back of a third row vehicle, normally you don't have a very large cargo space. Normally, if the third row seat is up, you can easily reach in, grab the pull cable to release the seat back and fold the seat down. The seat leg is spring loaded. Because think about this. I'm pulling a cable, so my force is coming towards the back of the vehicle. However, I want the seat to fold forward. When I pull this cable, it is releasing a latch. There is a spring in the side that then engages and pushes the seat forward. So by pulling that cable, that seat is popping forward just by that spring load. So this is the style of clock spring that will be in there, that when I disengage it, it can then fold that seat forward. Now, as we've looked at this seat and looked at some of the different components, I've pointed out structure and I've pointed out some features that are adding in cost. One thing that I haven't talked about yet are the plastics and a lot of other brackets that are enabling everything that this seat does. There is an entire another rack of all of those components that I did not bring out here. They're not all that interesting. However, they are all cost. And again, there is a big rack of a lot more of them. So then the question becomes, where am I putting that money? Do I really know? Do I need a closeout panel that goes between the feet? Can I leave that component open or off and leave it open? All of these decisions the OEM needs to make. Again, they're spending money that they want to cover their overhead with, and then they also want to make a profit on. So everything that they've paid here to build this seat, they're charging you plus profit. Is this where you want to be paying the money for your vehicle? You may say yes. The inside of your vehicle is where you drive. You don't drive on the hood. You don't care what the hood looks like. You don't drive on the outside of the door. However, the outside of the door is what impresses other people that you drive by. What matters to you as a customer? Is it the interior? Is it the exterior? Is it the battery and range? Is it the performance? All of those things you have to ask for yourself, answer for yourself, and then you determine what type of vehicle am I going to buy that has put the money where I want it to be. Those are just things that I consider, and I hope you do too. I hope you found some of this informative, and have a good day.